Now, fellas, the answer to our problem is more selling. The important thing that we have to do is to get our whole sales organization running on this track, so then we can... Come in.
The mail, Mr. Skelly.
What's this?
I don't know, Mr. Skelly. It was in the regular mail this morning.
Excuse me a second, fellas. I see what this is. If I don't, it'll bother me all the while I'm talking to you.
Sure, Mr. Skelly. Go right ahead.
Tell me your profit story, please. Well, what do you know?
What is it, Mr. Skelly?
Boys, meet Mr. Coogan. He was the hit of the convention. Say, this is really cute.
Oh, is he the one you were telling us about?
That's right. He was the dealer, the one who sold us on telling the complete profit story and the complete sales story. First, there was the voice of the product. Oh, they had a real big Coca Cola bottle, lit up real special, and then this voice came out. Well, it was just like the product was actually talking to you. It introduced each one of the scenes of the convention. So, when this fellow Coogan stepped out...
Hey, Bud!
Who said that?
I did, that's who. That's right, me, Coogan.
But how, what the...
Never mind how or who or why. I'm here, that's all. What were you going to do? Tell them about my part in the convention?
Well, yes, but I hope you don't mind,
Mind? Believe me, I'm very happy that you remember me. But that's why I'm here. I want to help you. Would you like me to actually show them the scene from the convention for you?
Well, yes, I certainly would. But I don't see how,
You just leave that to me, Mr. Skelly. Look, boys. It's just like Mr. Skelly said. Each one of the convention scenes started out with the voice of the bottle introducing it. But let me show you.
It just seems sometimes that the boys are not selling these days like they used to. They've got a wonderful sales story to tell about me. Profit, turnover, customer traffic. Why, it's something any other product would give its eye teeth to have. And yet, well, we just aren't getting it told. Here, let's back off from this thing for a moment and get an objective look at it. Let's look at it from the dealer's side of the counter. I want you to meet a friend of mine.
Hi. I'm a dealer. No, not that kind of dealer. Just a fellow that sells Coca Cola to the public for you. My name is Coogan. John Coogan. No relation to that movie actor fella. Fortunately. Or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it. When I said fortunately, I meant that if... According to this part of the program is about selling. The effective use of sales power. No doubt a lot of you are wondering why they pulled me into all this. After all, you're the ones who know all about Coca Cola, and I'm just a dealer that sells it to the public. Well, it's pretty logical, really. You see, maybe I could give you a few ideas about sales power. Because after all, I'm the one you're going to be using your sales power on. And the reason I was kind of glad to help out is, well, if you use your sales power more effectively, you're going to save a lot of my time. And if you use it right, you're going to make me a lot more money. And I think I can show you why. But look, why don't you come into my store with me? I can show you even better from in there. Wrong side. how do you like it? Of course, this isn't really my store. My store is a lot bigger than this, and it's always full of customers. And it's full of shelves, too. When we decided to put my store on stage here, why, we talked it over, and I realized there wasn't any sense in putting in all those shelves, so we just scratched them off. Well, you know why. No matter how many shelves we put in this store, the only thing you'd see would be this. And then they wanted to work in a lot of gags between me and the customers, like, well, you know the old one of the newlywed who comes running in so breathlessly.
You've just got to help poor little me. I want to buy a can of scrambled eggs.
I'm sorry, madam. You'll just have to scramble your own.
Well, that isn't very nice.
Well, you can see why we didn't use that gag. It was pretty bad. And anyway, you wouldn't have seen or heard it. About the only thing we could have put in here to get your attention would be to have a...
Hiya, Mr. Keegan.
Hi. It's Coogan. Keegan. Well, anyway, that's about the only thing that would have caught your attention. So, just between you and me, let's pretend that the store's full of shelves and customers, and there's a lot of real funny gags being pulled. Like the one about the... or the one about the... or the one when the fella comes in and... Okay, now that that's over and we've got it out of our systems, let's get down to business. Now, I wasn't kidding when I said the only thing that would catch your attention would be this display here, or the Coca Cola salesman walking across. What, again?
Hiya today, Mr. Flugan.
Fine. It's Coogan. Where was I? Oh, yes. I wasn't kidding, because the thing that's going to catch your attention is the thing that you're interested in. And we all know you're interested in Coca Cola. You want to know what I'm interested in? This. Isn't that a wonderful sound? You know, I could just listen to that by the hour. You know what that sound spells? Profit. You know, when anybody has anything they want to sell me, all they have to do is make whatever they're selling rhyme with that sound, and believe me, I'll listen. But if it doesn't rhyme, well, mostly it doesn't even make any sense to me. And it all comes out something like this.
Say, Mr. Flugan.
Coogan, Coogan.
Okay. Say, need for see for scram skidnick and a strass scranners with 4 extra cases. And in the larger size, 4 and 10 with a gizmo and a floyden hoyden smoyden, and 2 extra cases.
See what I mean? Sorry, not this week.
Okay.
See? No savvy. So remember, if you want to sell me something, just make sure it rhymes with profit. So remember, if you want to sell Coke to me, and in just a minute I'll show you why I actually want you to sell it to me, just talk to me about my profits. Tell me your profit story, your complete profit story, will you please? I know right about now a lot of you are wondering, what could be the complete profit story for a business like mine? Well, it's a lot of things, really, but it all boils down to just a few points, and they're all important. Now, the only reason I know so much about this is, well, I've got a son. Goes to college. Well, anyway, he was out here last summer. He was helping me around the store. And one afternoon, he came up to me and he says, Dad? He always calls me Dad. Well, why not? I'm his father, after all. Anyway, he says, Dad, I've been doing a lot of studying in college about business and systems and things like that, and I'd like to work it all out for your store here. And I thought it was wonderful, so I told him to go right ahead. Well, believe me, he did a wonderful job. And then one weekend, he brought me down here and showed me the whole thing. Like advertising, for instance. But here, I can show you even better. Now, do you see that woman over there? No, not the girl in the yellow sweater. Although I can see what you mean. Yes, that's it. The one in the green dress. Now, you will notice that there's two different brands of coffee there. One's an advertised leader, and the other's a brand she's never heard of. For a minute, she's tempted. And then all the advertising she's seen and heard starts running through her mind. Now, watch her. She puts down the cheaper brand, and she picks up the leader. The same thing is true with any really well-known product. Most people are sold before they even come into the store. And that's where you've got a terrific selling point, because no other individual product receives as much advertising as Coca Cola. But don't just tell me they do a lot of advertising and come in here and ask me to put up a sign. Oh, no, tell it to me in terms of sales. And then it'll rhyme with... And oh, how listen. My boy told me a lot of other things, too, you know, like keeping a record of the individual sales on each product so I'd know what my leaders were. And then he told me all about markup and how important it was to push those items with the highest markup. Well, it makes sense. He figured out the markup on a lot of different items. And you know, Coke was right up there on top. Let's see now, what else? Oh, yes, turnover. And now I know I have to turn over my money invested in inventory at least 8 times a year just to break even. And then there was return on investment. And then he worked out another gimmick where I could figure out my gross profit per square foot of store space. And then there was traffic, customer traffic. Yeah, I tell you, this thing Sammy worked... Oh, that's my boy's name, Sammy. Well, this thing he worked out was beautiful. He got an A on it when he turned it in back in school. And I just loved to have used it right here in this store. There was only one thing wrong with it. I just couldn't afford it. You see, I got a couple of thousand different items in this store, and I just couldn't afford to keep records like that. I even tried to give it away to a friend of mine who's an executive in a big chain store, but he couldn't afford it either. Not by the individual items. He could buy departments, of course, but not by the individual items. So there I am. Or was, rather, until somebody told me about you. Now, you can't do all my accounting for me, but you can tell me my complete profit story on selling Coca Cola, and you're the only one that can do it. And when you do it, make sure it rhymes with... And oh, how listen. In fact, any dealer will listen because you've got a terrific profit story on selling Coca Cola. Of course, you're just telling me the story isn't going to do either one of us any good. After you tell me the story in terms of my business, then start selling me, see? And it'll be easy because it'll rhyme with... You see, you got it trained already. Remember this. Tell me your profit story, your complete profit story in terms of my business, and then start selling me in terms of my profit. And then we'll both be able to hear... I know it's your business, but after all, you're trying to use your sales power on me. So for both our sakes, let's use it most effectively, huh? So it all adds up, doesn't it? What's that? How would it look in practice? Well, I honestly don't know because none of your men have ever tried it on me. But if they did, it would probably look something like this. See what I mean? Neat, nicely dressed. Knows I'm busy, so he waits till I have a moment to spare. Doesn't barge right in. Has a little consideration for me. Now that's what I like. Oh, hi there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Coogan.
He knows my name. Sweetest sound there is to a man's ear, his own name. And pronounced correctly, too. Not Keegan or Cogan. This guy's off to a good start.
Have a nice cold Coke, Mr. Coogan.
Well, thanks.
Oh.
Never can resist this, and is it good? You know, him getting me to drink it is a darn good idea, because if I like it, I'm going to see that there's always plenty on hand. And nice and cold, too. Of course, when he gives me one, I know he wants to talk to me. Well, let's see what he has to say.
Say, Mr. Coogan, I have a little something here I'd like to show you.
Uh-oh, that wasn't so good. Makes me suspicious. I'm looking for a trap. It would have been much better if he'd have said...
Say, Mr. Coogan, I've been checking my figures. Do you know how much money you make selling Coca Cola?
Now, that's better. He qualified his statement by saying he'd checked his figures, and he caught my attention by talking about my profits. However, I'm not going to tip him off as to what I know or don't know, so I play it cagey, see, and say, oh, not down to the penny, of course, but I've got a pretty good idea.
Well, I have it right down to the penny. That's part of my job. In the past year, your gross profit on Coca Cola was $208.80.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was that much. I'm still trying to play it cagey, see, but frankly, this guy's throwing me for a loss. I had no idea it was that much. But he doesn't give me a chance to get off the floor. He's right back in there with...
Let me show you these figures.
A personal profit story for John Coogan. Well, in the first place, it has my name on it. So I know it was made up for me and nobody else. Shows me he's taking an interest in my profit. So naturally, he has my attention.
Here's how much Coke you're selling. In the past year, you handled 324 regular cases and 396 cases of cartons. That gives you a yearly gross profit of $208.80 on Coca-Cola.
Say, that's pretty good. Well, what else could I say?
It's even better than good. By the way, what is the average margin on your stock?
Oh, I don't know. It varies. About 8% for butter and about 10% on coffee and milk and soap and as high as 20% or more on vegetables and bread and crackers.
Take a look at this figure then. There's a margin on the coal bottles and the margin on the take-home cases and cartons.
Yeah. Well, of course, I knew what the markup was on each case. But this guy staged it so it ties in with that yearly gross profit figure. Gives me a new slant on it. Say, that's quite a figure.
It's even more remarkable when you consider that all this is being done on an investment of only $18.20. That means you're making about $11 for every dollar you invested. That's something to think about, Mr. Coogan. Just imagine how much money you'd make if every one of the items in your store paid off as well as Coke.
Boy, what a thought that'd be. You see how all this ties in with profits? Say, you know more about my business than I do.
Well, actually, Mr. Coogan, the Coca-Cola business that you do is my business. And here's another thing, your turnover. Your Coca-Cola turns over about 70 times a year.
70 times a year? Boy, when I think of some of those dogs on my shelf. Now do you see what I mean about telling me the whole profit story? This guy's got me hooked already.
And here's something else. Based on these figures, 7,776 customers drink 7,776 bottles of ice-cold Coca-Cola from your cooler. And 1,584 buy 1,584 cartons. And all these customers are prospects for other things you sell in your store.
Boy, what a dope I've been. All this time, I've been looking at Coca-Cola as a necessary service. And now I find out it's one of my leaders.
I'd like to leave this with you, Mr. Coogan, and I'd like to give you something else.
Oh, what's that?
An idea. I think you can increase the profit you're making on Coca-Cola.
How? Said I, falling nicely into his trap.
Well, take your cooler sales, for example. To really cash in on this thing, you need a cooler right up here, where it'll attract the eyes of a lot more customers.
I think I'll play hard to get. How would that do any good?
Well, don't you see? With a cooler right up here, it would mean a lot more sales and a lot more profit for you.
But it'd never work. I'd have nobody to make change and wait on the customers. I think I've got him stopped this time.
Oh, you wouldn't have to bother about these customers. You could install one of our coin coolers.
Oh, but that'd cost a lot of money.
Actually, it wouldn't cost you any money. It would pay for its own way in extra sales. And remember the percentage of profit on your investment.
See, it rhymed.
Hey, where did you get that Coke?
There's a cooler in the back of the store, ma'am.
Let me get one for you, ma'am.
No, thank you. I'm an independent woman, and I intend to stay that way. But that doesn't mean that you have to hide the Coca Cola.
You see, Mr. Coogan, Coca-Cola practically sells itself when you put it in the right spots.
Well, how much would a coin cooler cost me? Well, what else could I say? The guy had me on the hooks. Everything rhymed with profit. But you know, I'll probably be more than glad when I count up those additional profits on Coke. Now we could play this scene back and forth about him trying to sell me a coin cooler and me not giving in till the very end. But we're not here to show you how to try to sell a cooler. We're here to show you how you tie in cooler sales with the complete profit story. So let's just pretend that we jockeyed back and forth for as long as you think it takes to sell a cooler, and finally I gave in and said yes, and he filled out the requisition.
Now, if you'll just sign here, Mr. Coogan, I'll have that new cooler out here and installed in time for your big weekend business.
You see, he asked me for the order. You'd be surprised how many times a salesman loses me by just not asking for the order. Say, this will be a pretty good sale for him. Now, you'd think he'd be satisfied with that, wouldn't you? But, oh, no, now that he's got me going on the profit story, he's going to give me the complete sales pitch. And quite frankly, with all this based on profits, I hope he doesn't stop talking. I'm getting greedy myself. Here you are.
Thank you, Mr. Coogan. Say, I was noticing that nice display of sundries you have over there.
Where?
Right over there.
Oh, that.
Do sundries like that have a good markup?
Pretty high. Yeah.
In other words, that's a good spot for high turnover items. Well, you've seen the turnover rate on Coke. How about letting me try a little experiment?
What kind of an experiment?
Well, let me fix up a nice display of 6 and 12 bottle cartons and a nice display of cases. And then if you could get your checkers to ask each customer, how about a carton of Coca-Cola for the weekend? Or if they have a really big order and one of the boys is taking it out to the car, they can say, can Johnny put a case of Coke in your car for you?
Sure, tell Johnny to...
You say that's a good spot for high turnover items. Well, you've seen the turnover rate on Coke. Here's a chance for you to spot your best high turnover item. It would give you a nicer return per square foot than you're getting now.
Get the way he placed me on that one. Not just let me increase your stock of Coca-Cola. Oh, no. He talked to me about my gross profit per square foot of store space. Another thing, he didn't try to tell me how to run my business. He suggested an experiment. Well, he's got my interest. I'm going to watch this experiment, which means I'm going to help it work. Well, we might give it a try.
Fine, Mr. Coogan. I'll get it set up right away.
And that's the way it goes all through the whole sales presentation. Now, we're not going to show you all the details, but you can bet he'd never stop there either. Oh, no, he'd go right on after me for more stock and more advertising and better carton display. Well, you know what I'm talking about. And he ties them all in with the complete profit story. Now, of course, he doesn't expect to do all these things every time he calls. I couldn't afford it. But please, if you want to do a complete selling job on me, be prepared. Have all your information worked out ahead of time and know just what it is you're selling me. Now, this story isn't just limited to me or my store. It'll work for any dealer on your route if you tell him the complete profit story. Of course, in some outlets, you'll have to vary the emphasis on the factors. Like in a service station. Your main talking point will be the amount of traffic it brings in. The most important thing is to consider what the dealer is most interested in. Then you build your profit story to tie in with his interest. That's right. But be sure to tell him the complete profit story. Because if you tell it right, he'll be practically begging you for more stock and advertising, yes, and coolers. But honestly, you men aren't telling the profit story right. In fact, in some cases, you're not even telling it at all. Believe me, if somebody from your outfit came into my store and gave me the kind of sales presentation you just saw, well, I don't know what would happen.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes?
Mr. Coogan, I've been checking over my figures. And do you know how much money you make selling Coca Cola?
Okay, fellas. Tell them the profit story. They're asking for it in every outlet. So let's give it to them. Right, Mr. Coogan?